be diving into the history of native language instruction in the United States. First, we will explore the history of language diversity in the U.S. According to James Crawford, language diversity in North America has ebbed and flowed, reaching its lowest level in the mid-20th century. But it has existed in every era, since long before the United States constituted itself as a nation. Language diversity has existed as long as people have occupied the place we now call the United States, since many native people lived here and communicated in various languages. Later in the history of the United States, language diversity became tied to both Native American languages and immigrant languages. Sonia Nieto deems the U.S. a living nation of immigrants and says, "Immigration is not a phenomenon of the past. In fact, the experience of immigration is still fresh in the minds of a great many people in our country. It is an experience that begins anew every day that planes land, ships reach our shores, and people make their way on foot to borders." Language diversity has been in decline because of a phenomenon Rumbaugh and Massey call the American paradox. They write that the Great American Paradox is that while the United States historically has been characterized by great linguistic diversity, propelled by immigration, it has also been a zone of language extinction in which immigrant tongues die out to be replaced by monolingual English. They quote Calvin Veltman, noting that he concluded that in the absence of immigration, all non-English languages would eventually die out, usually quite rapidly. This decline of language diversity in the United States has not been by accident. Crawford notes that there are two reasons for the restriction of languages other than English in the United States. He writes, "The first purpose was to deprive minorities of their individual rights in order to frustrate worker solidarity. The second one was to institute a perception of the United States as an exclusively Anglo community." Thankfully, the United States Supreme Court has made decisions that do not uphold the restriction of languages other than English. Some of the earliest examples are Meyer versus Nebraska and Farrington versus Takushige, both of which invalidated state laws banning foreign language instruction. The result of decades of rulings and legislation is the increased prominence of bilingual education. The Bilingual Education Act of 1968 has been considered the most important law in recognizing linguistic minority rights in the history of the United States. The Bilingual Education Act, as originally written, encouraged schools to experiment with new pedagogical approaches by funding programs that targeted principally low-income and non-English speaking populations. The act soon faced critics and the challenges of implementation and went through a period of turmoil. However, in 1994, under the Improving America Schools Act, the Education Act was reauthorized. The law now made explicit its main purpose: developing bilingual skills and multicultural understanding. Encouraging bilingualism was not without its critics, and anti-bilingualism policies peaked with the 1996 passage of English as the official language by the House of Representatives, banning the use of other languages by government agencies and officials. This was followed by the 2002 No Child Left Behind Act, which did not ban bilingualism, but imposed high-stakes testing in public schools that promoted the adoption and implementation of English-only instruction. Moving forward, there are things that you can do to promote native language learning in the United States. You can become an activist to dismantle systems of white supremacy that associate bilingualism with inferior intelligence. You can also look at the systematic causes of the suppression of language education and immigrant student success. Factors such as lack of economic and academic opportunity. Finally, you can vote to support the causes you care about, including promoting native language learning in public schools.